All kids didn't go to the Rebbe Seder, and I would have been definitely too young. The Rebbe had the Seder as long as the Friedrich Rebbe's Rebbetzin was alive. She passed away, as we know, on Asar B'Tevis Tafshin Lamed Aleph. So the last Seder the Rebbe had upstairs in the Friedrich Rebbe's apartment. The last Seder the Rebbe had in the Friedrich Rebbe's apartment was Tafshin Lamed. And actually, Tafshin Lamed Aleph, I heard that the Rebbe called the Rebbe Chodakov on Erev Pesach morning, and the Rebbe told him that he heard that it's Spitz Chabad, that the Rebbe used to use the word Spitz Chabad in a certain way. And it wasn't usually like in a good positive way, usually. Sometimes, yeah, but mostly not. So the Rebbe heard there's certain people who are planning to come to his house, and the Rebbe gave a warning that nobody should dare to come to the Rebbe's house. Nobody should dare. So Taka, the Rebbe was alone, only the Neshamash or Meshamshim, I don't know exactly who. I know the Shalom Bansburg used to be with the Rebbe all the years for the Seder. So it was 20 years that the Siddim was Zoicha to be by the Rebbe, see the Rebbe by the Seder, from Tafshin Yud Aleph, Tafshin Yud, I should say, until Tafshin Lamed. It's actually Tafshin Yud. I want to get to say that itself. Everything brings more memories, but it's actually Tafshin Yud. You see, it's printed in the Hanocha that the Rebbe said, "How come on the first day of Pesach? There was a how come that nobody came to eat Afikaiman in the place where the Rebbe the Shver had Afikaiman 10 years, and before the doors used to be locked and everybody used to fight to get in. And now the doors are open, and nobody thought to come and eat Afikaiman in the place where the Rebbe the Shver had ate Afikaiman for 10 years. So the next night, some people came. But basically, the idea was that it was open. The Seder was open, especially for the first few years. There wasn't such a big crowd, so people would come whoever could, even though later it sounded like the Rebbe didn't want so much that the Balabatim should come, because they should make a Seder for their families. But Bachrim would come, would rush through their Seder, and they would come. I've heard from Bachrim who were in the Chofs. I mean, that was the last few years that we were able to be by the Rebbe Seder. Bachrim would, the Seder was that the first night of Pesach, the Rebbe would go to where the Bachrim were having the Seder, and the Rebbe would give a bracha. If you look, many of them are Muga, and definitely in the Hanachas you can look every single year, you see the bracha which the Rebbe gave to the Bachrim before the Seder. When the Rebbe gave the bracha to Tashim and Malach was last time. That means even after the Rebbe stopped eating the Seder upstairs, the Rebbe still continued to go to the Bachrim Seder and give them a bracha. And actually Tashim Lamed Ches, which was after the Rebbe suffered by a heart attack, so it was harder for the Rebbe to go upstairs. So Rashag pushed very much that the kitchen should be open in 1414, and that way the Rebbe didn't have to go up any stairs. And straight, it was the ground level. It would come in straight into the first floor, and that's where the kitchen was. It made the Rebbe's mother's apartment became part of the kitchen. And the Rebbe would go in, the Rebbe would look inside the kitchen, see how everything is, and then the Rebbe would stand usually where the Yontef licht were burning, and that's usually where the Rebbe would say the bracha to the Bachrim. This is Tashim Malach. For a few years, it wasn't just to the Bachrim. After the Bachrim, the Rebbe would go to different places where there was a Seder. One time was a Seder for Russians and free. Another time was a Seder when the Iranian kids came. There was a Seder for them, Tashlam Tes, I think, and the Rebbe came to them also. The Rebbe gave a bracha on Lashon HaKodesh. The Rebbe asked if anybody could translate into Iranian, into Persian, whatever you call the language. And anyway, they would go and give a bracha. Anyway, so the thing was, what I want to tell you is that the Rebbe would come in to give a bracha, so nobody would dare start the Seder before the Rebbe came in, because the Rebbe wanted to see everything set nicely. So the Rebbe would come and give a bracha, and right after the Rebbe went out giving a bracha, then everybody would sit down and make the Seder. And those who realized, and slowly everybody caught on, that you do the Seder as fast as possible, so that you can go to watch the Rebbe Seder. And a lot of Bachrim became experts in making the Seder 15-20 minutes. They came out, didn't eat anything, the kazesim of matzah, and Shulchan Aruch, they had the egg, and then Afrikaiman, and the YTTL, and they ran to the Rebbe Seder. There's one Bacher who was at Yisroel in Kutza, Tosha Chavav. What? I don't know if we're going to have enough time to say everything I want to. There's going to be a lot of questions. Okay. I'm sorry. So one Bacher was in Kutza, Tosha Chavav. He tells me he sat down and he starts making a Seder. And somebody told him, listen, if you want to catch the Rebbe Seder, then you better get a move on. He didn't start moving. But I heard from one of my teachers in London, Rebbe Levi, so he says he remembers one Bacher who, the moment it was Nacht, he would make Kiddush. He said when the Rebbe came in to say the bracha, he swept all his crumbs under the matzah dekel, he swept all the crumbs under, put it down nicely. And as the Rebbe would come in, he would say L'shana Bar V'Shalayim. And as the Rebbe went out to 770, back to 770, he would run after the Rebbe. And he would not much be there right in the beginning. What was that to see right in the beginning? This is very interesting. The Rebbe would set up the kaira that was by the Rebbe part of the Seder. Even though it says different places you should come in, everybody should be ready. But the Rebbe Dafka would set up the kaira just before the Seder as part of the Seder. The Rebbe would stand. So the Rebbe would bring from his room matzahs, and I'm not sure what he would carry and what a bacher would carry. There was, I can't remember right now, the matzahs and the wine, and I can't remember which something, but the matzahs and the wine came from the Rebbe's room. The stairs going up from the Rebbe's room to the second floor, so you understand, there was pack on people waiting, the bacher waiting to be able to get inside, but the Rebbe has to go first. So the Rebbe would look around, make sure the whole time to see that the bacher got through, so that whatever the matzahs, the wine, whatever he was holding wouldn't break or whatever it was. Anyway, the Rebbe set up, they say, actually a napkin or something, whatever. Doesn't matter. Anyway, so the Rebbe would take a large cloth napkin, and the Rebbe would fold it in half, and then fold it again in half. What? Like you take a napkin, you fold it in half. It's a big napkin, and again in half. And this way you have 3 compartments. And the Rebbe would put one matzah in each compartment. Yisroel, v'alav ha'levi, v'alav ha'kohen. Now the Rebbe would do every single thing the Rebbe would do by the Seder. He would first read inside the Haggadah, and then do it. And this is the whole Seder would be like that. First read what it says, and then say with his mouth what it says in the Seder, what the Alter Rebbe writes to do, and then the Rebbe would do it. Moshe, even when it came to Rochza, Rochatz, or Rochza, which you don't talk, so the Rebbe would, let's say Orchatz, say what it says for Rochatz, and for Karpas, before he washed. Same thing as by Rochza, Maitzimatza. Kairach, I never heard how the Rosh Kairach, so I can't say, but Chayra. Because it sounds like the Rebbe didn't speak before Kairach. I know a lot of people are not makar than that, but whatever. It's easier for the Rebbe not to speak. In a house, I know it's hard sometimes. But, so the Rebbe would always read all the instructions before he did them. So even by setting up the Kaira, the Rebbe would read the instructions, Yisroel, V'alav HaLevi, V'alav HaKoyin, and there would read the instructions, and then they put in the matzahs, and then put the minim on top of it. The Zroya, it seems like that the Rebbe himself would take off some of the meat. I don't know if they took off some of the meat before that. We know that Friedrich Rebbe was very makbid to take off the meat first. Make sure there's hardly any meat on the Zroya. You have to leave a little bit because it has to be a tavshil, something to cook. So a little bit of meat you have to leave on there. But most of the meat would be taken off. He brings down, Moonshine brings down that even the Rebbe would sometimes take out the chut in the middle of the neck. There's like a string in the middle, and they take that out also. The beitzah, the egg, and all this Rebbe would put those straight down on the cloth which is covering the matzah. The egg, the Rebbe tried as much as he could not to break the egg. They say this once or twice, when Pasha the egg did not stand, however the shape of the matzah, whatever it was, and the egg Pasha would not stand, and then the Rebbe gave a little break of the shell so that it should stand. But in general, the Rebbe tried as much as he could that the egg should not be broken, it should be whole, and the Rebbe would put the egg down. The Maror, so there was like this. There was on the middle of the table was chrein, grated chrein. And we know also that the Rebbe was makbid to eat a piece of chrein also, not just grated, but also a keppel, I think the Rebbe called it. And the Rebbe would eat a keppel. They say that one time, in the time of the Friedrich Rebbe, the Rebbetzin, our Rebbetzin, put down for the Friedrich Rebbe a shtickle of chrein also, because she was so used to it, doing it for the Rebbe, for her husband. She did it for her father also, for the Friedrich Rebbe. So the Friedrich Rebbe smiled and says, "Ich darf es nicht." Friedrich Rebbe said he didn't need the keppel, the piece of not grated chrein, but the Rebbe would eat the piece also. So on the table there was like lettuce and there was grated chrein, and the Rebbe would take a leaf. So I heard from a number of people. Some people say it was different. I don't know, but I heard from a number of people. They would take one leaf of lettuce, and then he would take a spoonful of. Could be. And they would take a spoonful of the chrein and put it to his hand until it was the size of an egg. And the Rebbe would squeeze it under the table. My shver told me he heard the water dripping from the chrein as the Rebbe squeezed it. So I asked him, did the Rebbe squeeze it on Shabbos also? He said, yeah. It was interesting, but they would always hear they would do it under the table, you would hear the water dripping down onto the floor. They put it again, and squeeze it together until it was the size of an egg. They would take a keppel, a shtickle, and put it on top. Then he'll cover it with another piece of lettuce. That was both for Maror and for Chazeres. Charoset, the Rebbe would take, I'm not 100% sure about this. I have heard, but I'm not sure, so I don't know. But some people say that the Rebbe would take a piece of the peel of onion and put the charoset onto that, so that it shouldn't be dripped through, even though it's really dry anyway, because we didn't put any water inside the charoset. But the Rebbe would put it on. That's what I heard saying. The Rebbe would use a piece of the peel of the onion. So charoset, the karpas was, I think, was a piece of onion. It wasn't always a whole onion, and that also I got different shmuos from different people. Maybe each year was different. I don't know. But see, Bar Lipska told me that it seemed like the Rebbe was not makbid that it should be a whole onion. It was a shtickle. And the Chazeres was the Maror, same thing as the Maror was Chazeres. Again, the Rebbe made a pile the size of an egg, squeezed it out, and put a piece on top. The Rebbe would say also the whole Lashon, Kaddish, Urchatz, Karpas, all the Simonim, everything the Rebbe would say. In the Kiddush, they say this is one of the strangest things which would happen. The Rebbetzins would sit in a separate room. So you had the Friedrich Rebbe's Rebbitzin, the Rebbe's Rebbitzin, and the Rashag and his wife. So Rashag's wife was in there, and in the years till Tashin Chavdalad was the Rebbe's mother. The Rebbitzins were in a separate room. When it came time for the Rebbe to make Kiddush, now I don't know how she knew exactly when it was ready, but whatever it was, they say that the Rebbitzin would open the door and look at the Rebbe while he made Kiddush. Nobody was able to hear the Rebbe making Kiddush. Even whoever was standing right next to the Rebbe could not hear the Rebbe making Kiddush. But the Rebbitzin would stand during Kiddush. It looked like she was being Yitzah. And as soon as the Rebbe finished Kiddush, the Rebbitzin closed the door, and that was, you didn't see the Rebbitzin again until after the Seder. Right? The Rebbe made Kiddush. Now, for Heseba, for leaning, you're not allowed to lean by the Rebbe. Even if you're invited to the Seder by the Rebbe's room, by the Rebbe, you're not allowed to lean. You're not allowed to lean in front of your Rabbi Mufik. So the Rebbe would not lean all the years he was by the Friedrich Rebbe. In Tafshin Yud, the Rebbe leaned. So somebody asked the Rebbe, how come you're leaning? You say the Rebbe is still alive. So the Rebbe said, Shulchan Aruch is Shulchan Aruch. And the Rebbe leaned. Now how did the Rebbe lean? So nobody else by the table leaned, besides the Rebbe. So they would take a chair. Normally, there's all the Sudas during the year, the Rebbe had his place, which is by the Friedrich Rebbe's left. That means if there was the table, the head of the table is the Friedrich Rebbe's place, they would always set the Friedrich Rebbe's place, always. With a becher, with wine, the bottle of wine. I don't think they filled up the wine, but there was always a becher there for wine, and there was a matzah or chalas, whatever it was, whichever Suda. So the Friedrich Rebbe's place is at the head of the table, and the Rebbe was on the Friedrich Rebbe's left because he was the second son-in-law. What? I'm not sure. I didn't really ask. I don't know. And the Rashag, being the older son-in-law, was on the Friedrich Rebbe's right. So the Rebbe continued to sit in this place. Now, so always the Rebbe sat first on this side of the table. There's pictures of one Suda, Matzah and Kippur, or something like that. There's pictures of a Suda, so we know what a Suda looked like. So the Rebbe, on the same side as the Rebbe, right next to the Rebbe, sat Reb Shmuel Levitin. And then there was others that had fixed places. There's usually about 10, 12 people who are always invited to all the Sudas. Reb Shachorgin, Handel Lieberman, whatever, a bunch of older people. A bunch of them were people who already didn't have families and didn't really have anywhere to eat, but they were invited to the Sudas. On Pesach, so by the Seder, they would move Reb Shmuel Levitin. Reb Shmuel Levitin would move one chair over, so there should be another space. So the Rebbe's chair is like this. I don't think it had arms. And next to the Rebbe, they put another chair facing this way. In other words, the back of the chair is to the Rebbe's left. Not towards the wall, you know what I mean? But this way. On there was two pillows. So the Rebbe would lean on the two pillows on the other chair. I know it's written, there's a mistake over there in Maisa Melech. There's a mistake over there because they write the old years, they tied the two chairs to each other, shouldn't slip. And they say in the name of Shamshi Yunik, so I asked him, and seemingly it's a mistake. It did not happen by the Friedrich Rebbe Sudas upstairs, in the Friedrich Rebbe's apartment. Seemingly the Rebbitzin did that at home. A slippery floor, she didn't want that the chair should slip as the Rebbe leans for Haseba. So what they would do is they would tie the two chairs together, and that way the chair would not slip when the Rebbe leaned on it. So that, the Rebbitzin showed it to Shamshi Yunik in the house, and even later when the Rebbe started to make the story in the library next to some 70 from Tashim and Base, So he always did that. He told me he always set it up that way also. He would tie the two chairs together so it shouldn't slip. I heard from people, how did the Rebbe lean? Let's say with a bech with Kiddush. The Rebbe would take, when he finished making Kiddush, he would sit down, pick up the kois and the tessel, the little plate under the becher, and the napkin, and he would slowly, with his elbow, lean against beginning with his elbow, lean against the pillows, until he was leaning all the way against the pillows, and he would drink like that. Same thing as for the matzah. So the Rebbe would lean like that. That was Kiddush, Kaddish. Now, for a bunch of years, when they would pour for the Rebbe, Rebbe let them pour for him. But one year, the bacher who always used to pour for the Rebbe, he became a chassan, and the rule was in the Friedrich's apartment, once he became a chassan, no more serving. So they say one time the Friedrich Rebbetzin said to someone, he became a chassan, apostle, can't work here anymore. So he became a chassan, or maybe he got married, whatever it was. So the bacher who poured was the pouring where there became a whole machlokes, which people. And from then on, the Rebbe started to pour by himself. The bottle was always inside a paper bag on the floor. And the Rebbe would pick it up from the floor and pour for himself. It's nowadays it's well known. It didn't used to be known that the Rebbe would always pour 3 times. And not only that, when the Rebbe would refill the becher after spilling for the makas, the Rebbe would also refill 3 times, even though it's a little bit. But the Rebbe would refill 3 times. The 3rd time should spill over. The Rebbe was always makar that should spill over. This is also something which wasn't known for years. By the way, not only do you spill over for Havdalah, we also spill over for Kiddush. I know now everybody does it, so we don't know it's a Kiddush, but I remember when it became a Kiddush. For years we didn't know about such a thing. I remember one time when the shluchim in YTTL, I was pouring him for Kiddush. He said, "What's that? I'm not making Havdalah now. Why are you making spilling over?" Wasn't known. It's a Tashin Lamates. We still didn't know it's such a thing. But later it became known that you spill over also for Kiddush. Koisi Ravaya. This is just by the way, with all the by the ways, Tashalam and Ches. So before the Rebbe went home, before Kiddush Kislev, so the Gaboim, the Maskirin, had a turn to serve the Rebbe during the meal. So it was Friday night, and the Rebbetzin was there. So Rabbi Yonah Klein, he poured the becher, and he poured it to the top, the way he was used to. Filled the becher to the top, and that's it. And the Rebbe's waiting, and he's not making Kiddush, and he didn't understand what was going on. So the Rebbetzin says to him, Rabbi Klein, the Dafnish Zayin Azad gentleman, and you could pour over, you could let it spill. So he had never heard before that it should spill over by Kiddush also. Okay, so it's Kaddish. Orchatz, what's interesting, even though by Fabrengen, there's always bring the Rebbe water to wash for Hamaitzi, or whatever it was. Well, by Fabrengen was just Hamaitzi. They always bring the Rebbe a shissel and a kvart to wash. Meir, yeah. But it wasn't a kvart, it was just a glass. Right, Meir. Mincha, yeah. After Fabrengen before Mincha, I always saw it was a glass. But here upstairs in the Friedrich's apartment, the Rebbe would always walk to the kitchen and wash over there for Chatz and for Achza. The karpas, I think he said the Rebbe would take out like a little piece from the middle of the onion, and I think with a knife take out a piece, and then dip it in 3 times in the salt water. Yachatz the Rebbe would always do under the cover. The Rebbe would always put under the cover, would break it without looking, in other words. Then take it out, and the Rabbeim always had the minig, all the Rabbeim had the minig to break the afikomen into 5 parts, because the middle matzah is in a gvura, and you have to break gvura into 5 parts. In mamtik dinim, you have to break the gvura. So that's why you break it into 5 parts. Why 5? It's written. What? Yeah, but why 5? Okay. How it's good to know, good to remember that you have 10 minim on the kaira. It says you have the 3 matzahs for Chabad, Chacham Vina Das, and then there's 6 things on top of the kaira. Yisroel Beit Maror and Charoset. That's 6, and the kaira itself, the plate, is malchus, because malchus is an in of receiving. So the kaira is malchus. It's also interesting. The Rebbe used to have a kaira after, only since Tafshin Yud, but it was covered, so you shouldn't see it. Some say the reason why the Rebbe covered it because of somebody shouldn't get upset, Tafshin Yud, whatever it was. It's hard to know. Vogel says that all those who make a kaira by the Rebbe's table do not have a kaira. Only the Admor himself has a kaira. Some people say that wherever you are, you shouldn't have a kaira, because wherever you are, the Rebbe's there. But it's mashed for different places. I think the Rebbe's answer is you should have a kaira, because in your malchus, because you're missing the your malchus. The bottom plate to hold everything. A tray to hold everything. No, the meaning everybody had, yeah. Everybody had the meaning. By the Rebbe say that everybody had, not just their own 3 matzahs and their own zoya, beit, samara, etc. Everybody had. What? Whatever they used, I suppose so. They'll give you enough napkins for everybody. How I think they didn't use too much not real stuff. I think by the Rebbe's table they would use only real stuff, a real napkin, a real handkerchief, a real tichel, like a real. I think so. Also, yeah, even though the Rebbe would use paper napkins, that he would use. Nowadays, the hechsher, it's the way they make it nowadays is different than what it used to be. I was discussing with the Shalom Charatana. Anyway, whatever. Hurry up to now. So Yachatz Magid. Now, Manishtana, the early years, Rashag's son was there, and he would say Manishtana. Friedrich would say Manishtana. But later years, I think Yankel Katz was a person from Chicago, Yankel Katz, and he would many times bring his son along, and his son would say the Manishtana. And then the Rebbe wanted there should be a chazan. So Yankel Katz from Chicago was the chazan for the Haggadah, and he would say loud, and people used to laugh sometimes the way he said, not loud in front of the Rebbe, but people would smile at the way he said some words, but he was the chazan. Sometimes people would hint to him to go lower, because they want to hear the Rebbe saying. But the truth is that the first part of the Seder, till after benching, you could not hear the Rebbe saying the Haggadah. From Shrei Chamoscha, there you could hear the Rebbe saying the Haggadah. So for years, I don't know why it was a secret. Nobody used to chazer the way the Rebbe said the Haggadah. Only lately, people started chazering, especially the Pitcher Hoffen. He has a few recordings. The way he says, the way he remembers the Rebbe saying the Haggadah from Shrei Chamoscha. I mean, everything was, like we see in the Haggadah, picking up the kois, place of Hishamda, and so on. I didn't hear that they used to sing by the Seder, Hishamda. I didn't hear that they sung. It was more or less quiet, besides Rabbi Yankel Katz would say who was the chazan. So he'd finish off each piece, or maybe he'd say the whole thing loud, I don't know. What? No, his sons. Yeah. Again, till after benching, nobody heard. Could be. I don't know if it was like Mishnayos. They say it was a mix between the psukim of before Shofar of Rosh Hashanah and davening. Whatever. There's the recordings of Reb Fitcher often explaining how the Rebbe says, and he repeats it exactly the way the Rebbe did it. Rachza, again, the Rebbe would go and the Rebbe would read all the instructions, and the Rebbe would go to the kitchen to wash. For the makas, they always try to make sure there should be a broken keli. It did happen sometimes there's no broken keli, but the Rebbe would pour it onto a keli which was on the floor. I think there was makbid not to put the makas on the table and not even to pass it over the table. One year, Mendel Nottik went to buy to get a broken keli. So he went to the store over here and he's trying to break the keli, and the guy's getting nervous. He said, "Don't worry, I'm going to pay you. Every keli I break, I'm going to pay you. I just try to break it in the right way, that it should be." He broke it too much, so he couldn't even use it. You want to break it a little bit. It's enough to use a keli with a little chip at the top, It's broken. So keli shover. But he would. They say that Rabbi Yamin Klein said that it wasn't always a broken keli. I guess they didn't have it. It doesn't sound like it. I heard the two Chassidim were makbid not to go to the Sudas upstairs. Rabbi Tzin Shemton Ol Shalom and Rabbi Metlik Ol Shalom. They didn't want to see the Rebbe not sitting by the head of the table. And, it was their Haggadah. But of course, all the Bachrim wanted to see the Rebbe by the Seder. Shulchan Aruch, matzah. Matzah, the Rebbe would hold all three matzahs, as I understand. If he took it out of the cover or not, I didn't really catch. But the Rebbe would hold three matzahs between three fingers. And when it came for hamoitzi, and for matzah, he would let the bottom matzah drop, and be holding just the two matzahs for Shekshonu says one al achilas matzah. The Rebbe took dafka from both matzahs, a piece from each, and the Rebbe leaned, of course, the Rebbe made sure to eat both matzahs at the same time. Both from the top matzah and from the middle matzah, the Rebbe would make sure to eat it together. To eat it slowly. Sometimes they say they see blood come out from the Rebbe's mouth, because the Rebbe didn't have teeth. It was very hard for the Rebbe to eat the matzah. Some people claim the Rebbe would eat matzah the whole year. And Shabbos and whenever it was, the Rebbe always had matzah in his room. And some people claim the reason why the Rebbe ate matzah a whole year is to keep his gums hard, used to eating matzah. People claim, I don't know where it comes from, but how's he up there? Maror, so you'd see generally the Rebbe would not cough, except one year they say it was very, very strong, the Maror. Later the Rebbe asked Chaim Baruch Halberstam for a few years, he was the waiter, he was in charge of the kitchen, so the Rebbe asked him, what happened? Why was it so strong? They say if you leave the frame that's had water for a long time, it stays strong. So, I don't know, whatever it was. But a lot of people by the table tried to copy the Rebbe, and they all ended up coughing and choking, and it was, if they copied the Rebbe, well, it's hard not to. If you're sitting by the Rebbe's table, you want to do what the Rebbe's doing. The Rebbe could do it. But most years the Rebbe did not cough by the Maror. They say that the Rebbe would after making the sandwich for charoset, so the Rebbe would take with a knife a piece of charoset, the dry charoset which is on the kaira, and put it into the tessel of which you made Kiddush, on the plate under the wine, under the becher, had wine inside. So the Rebbe would put a piece of charoset into there, and the Rebbe would take off the top leaf, the ball of charoset, of grated grain, of the ball, they would dip it in, then shake it off, and then put the leaf back and eat it together. The same thing as by the kairich, except here I think, and there I'm not 100% sure, that he took the knife and put a little bit of dry charoset onto the grain, but again I'm not 100% sure about that. So he brings it. I'm not going to waste the time now looking for it. But you put the charoset on and then shake it off. But the charoset is always on the bowl of grain and not on the lettuce. When it came to koyrech, they say the Rebbe was very makbid to eat each piece of matzah together with the maror, if it's grain or lettuce. They saw Pasha the Rebbe taking, like it breaks up when you eat. So they would like take a piece and put it on so that he should be eating each piece matzah together with maror. Also, somebody told me it was very interesting that the Rebbe was leaning, and matzah falls down, and the Rebbe would take all the pieces which fell down on his kapata, and he would eat them also. And he says, it's interesting, he says, the Rebbe's matzah, you can't waste it. That's the way he looked at it. But so the Rebbe would pick up all the pieces and eat that also. They eat everything, right? Whatever. And I don't know what happened there, and I can't tell you. We don't know all the Rebbe's kavanas, but what the Rebbe did, we saw. What? No. They say the Rebbe would eat a very small share of matzah, not a lot. I think it's like a third of a matzah or something. The Rebbe would eat a small share. Shulchan Aruch. Of course, the first thing is they eat is the egg. They say it was always amazing to see. The Rebbe would take the egg, crack it on the table a little bit, so it's really a little open, and with one hand, he would take off the peel. And I don't know how he did it. With one hand, he would take off the peel. The Rebbe would not open the egg to check it. Dip it in 3 times, and eat the egg slowly. Not some people saying sholem, but the Rebbe didn't put the whole egg in his mouth in one go. The Rebbe ate it slowly, but he didn't check it. I mean, al pi halacha, you don't have to check it. I was hearing one time the Kiddush family, and so he's arguing, and one says you have to check, one says you don't have to check. He says, the Rebbe didn't check the egg, why should I check? So he ate the egg. The other one said you have to check. He checked, and he found Baka blood drop. Blood. No? Never heard that. Then we'll bring the Rebbe the fish. It's interesting that this is the whole year. It wasn't just wasn't just Pesach. The Rebbe would always cover the fish completely with salt until you could not see the fish. It was completely covered with salt. I heard this from many, many, many people. It's not just Pesach. And people said, we try. I don't know. I tried it at home. I don't know. The previous Rav of Nebrach, Moshe Landau, I heard from him also. I was in his share. So he brought I don't remember what the connection was. So he gave like a shy smile. He says, "You see it babayit." He says, "I tried it at home. I don't know how you could put this inside your mouth. Like so much salt." The Rebbe was always back to cover the fish salt, and he ate the whole thing. I heard from Rabbi Tolzman, one of my teachers, that I'm not sure if this was Pesach or Bechlal, but it sounded like it was Pesach. That one, they didn't want the Rebbe to eat a lot of salt, so they didn't put any salt on the table. And so the Rebbe called the waiter, Chaim Baruch Halber Shlam, and he said, bring zaltz. The Rebbe says you have to bring. So he brought a bowl full of salt. And the Rebbe took, they say, the Rebbe put extra salt this time, just like you shouldn't mix in. With a spoon, you're just like putting salt. But the Rebbe would always eat the fish completely, all the salt. The soup, the Rebbe would always eat the soup complete, till the end. It seems the Rebbe had a way that the last spoonful, he didn't tip the bowl, just with a spoon he would like get something and eat it. I just want to mention one more thing when it comes to the Chal the Sudas. This is like the Seder and all Sudas. The Rebbe would they served the Rebbe first, of course, but the Rebbe never started eating until every single person by the table had his portion, and the Rebbe even waited for the Bachrim who were serving that they should also have a portion and be sitting by the table. Until then, the Rebbe never started eating. The rule was, this is Ginun Melucha, this is how it, by a Melech, this is how it works. You don't start eating before the Melech starts. So before the Rebbe picked up his spoon or fork, whatever it was, nobody dared to start eating. As soon as the Rebbe finishes eating, the Rebbe would put down his spoon or fork, and then everybody stop eating, even if you're in the middle. Doesn't matter, you stop. That was the rule. When it came to the chicken, it was very interesting. And this is by all Sudas. The Rebbe would hardly eat anything from the main course. So the Rebbe would pick up the fork, and this is a sign that people should start eating. The Rebbe would like play with the chicken while people were eating. When the Rebbe decided that everybody had enough time to eat, the Rebbe would take a fork, dig it into the chicken, give one twist. Whatever came up on the fork, that's what the Rebbe would eat. They'd put the fork down. There's only one thing I remember, Rabbi Tolzna told us that there was sometimes, this had to do with night or day. Sometimes it was chicken and kugel, so they would have a taste of kugel and a taste of chicken. And there was a Seder, I can't remember right now the Seder, I have to ask him again. Like by night, one time was chicken before kugel, one time was kugel before chicken. There was a Seder, and he told me every time was the same. By night one, and by day the other. I don't remember which one, I don't want to say. But I have to ask him.
I heard from someone who was at the Seder,
Yeah.
invited the Rebbe, and then I bought the Rebbe.
Yeah.
So the Rebbe was, like you said, he would eat. And he didn't wait that much long. And he was hungry. So he took the whole pole of the chicken and put it in his pocket. And the Rebbe saw it, and they gave a big, big smile.
I heard the Bachram started laughing or something about this. So the Rebbe said, Ayid is hungry. Also, it's interesting, the Rebbe always used to drink during the Seder, how the Rebbe would say l'chaim after the fish. By the Seder, the Rebbe would drink a full cup of wine, like a fifth kais. People say l'chair, it's according to the Shitta the Rambam, we should have 5 kaises. The Rebbe would drink another kais of wine between the fish and the soup, but he would not say l'chaim. And people claim, I don't know based on what, they claim that the reason why the Rebbe didn't say l'chaim, it shouldn't be like, if you say l'chaim, it's already like a chosh of a kais, and it's as if you're adding to the 4 kaises. The 4 kaises, you say a bracha on each kais, because each one's choshev. So if you say l'chaim, it's like you're making this kais choshev also, so the Rebbe did not say l'chaim. Dafke the night of the Seder. All other times the Rebbe would say l'chaim. Between the, what? And wine, yeah. Between the fish and the soup. Or by day, the fish and the chicken, the Rebbe would say l'chaim. What else is there? I think that's Afrikaiman. Safon. It's interesting. Tashech Haftas, Shluchim to Australia, the first group of Shluchim came back. And I don't know exactly what the problem was. Tashchavtes, Tashalamed, it was very hard to get into the Rebbe Seder. But they got permission, the Bachram from the Shluchim to Australia. So the first night of Pesach, Tashchavtes, so the Rebbe turns to the oldest one, was Rebbe Kaplan from Tzfas. The Rebbe asked him, did you eat Afrikaimen yet? He said, yeah. He didn't think of anything, but he said, yeah. Okay. So the Rebbe continued to say that. So the next night they realized the Rebbe wants something. So all the Shluchim, they realized it wasn't just to Kaplan himself, it was to all the Shluchim. So all the Shluchim they didn't know what the Rebbe wants, so they brought the Afrikaimen in the pockets. We'll see what the Rebbe wants. So again, before Afrikaimen, the Rebbe asked, did you eat Afrikaimen? He said, no. So the Rebbe gave each one Afrikaimen himself, from his own Afrikaimen, the Rebbe gave to each liach. And the Rebbe also asked that the people who are sitting by the table should move up a little bit, give them place to sit. Kabbalah, whatever, it's very, very strict not to eat standing up. It's very, very strict. Even drinking not. Eating, very, very strict not to eat standing up. So the Rebbe asked the people by the table to move up a little bit and let these shluchim sit down to eat Afrikaimen. The next day, Rashag asked the Rebbe why he gave them Afrikaimen. So the Rebbe said, it says in the Haggadah, you should give to all B'nai Beisai. And that was the Rebbe saying that the Shluchim are his B'nai Beis. And then the Rebbe added, and he said, Zev zech stark gemutzet, dorten. They suffered is not the right word. They toiled, worked hard. Struggle. Yeah, whatever. It wasn't easy for them. There's Afrikaimen. And before benching, the Rebbe would pour the kois shalio before his own kois. The kois shalio was a glass. The Rebbe would pour it. The Rebbe explained somewhere that because we're closer to the Geula, we want to pour Elyon on his kois as early as possible. Even though some people say you should pour it after benching, just before Shvei Chamascha, but the Rebbe would always pour before benching. Another minhag that they realized during benching, the Rebbe himself did not say Rabbi Yisai, was not mezamen on the night. But generally, most of the sudas, or almost all the sudas upstairs, the Rebbe was not mezamen himself. Somebody else would say the zimun. But nevertheless, the Rebbe held the kois by the Seder during the whole benching till Bein Brachman. So seemingly everyone's supposed to do that. So like the Rebbe Seder, the Rebbe did that, so everyone did that. And by the Seder, everyone should hold the kois. I think I've seen in whatever my Shver's family, whatever, even the women hold the kois during benching. I don't know where the makar for that is, but the men for sure hold the kois during benching. What? Even? No, not past the limit. Same as regular benching. The Rebbe himself didn't used to go to open the door. Anyway, by the upstairs, he had to open all the doors from the Friedeker's apartment until the front door. To go with the candles. They say that Tashin Lamed, they didn't hardly let any Bachram in. The Bachram was standing outside hoping that they'd be able to get in to part of the Seder. And as soon as they opened the door, Chaim Baruch opened the door with the candles, and the candles went flying, whatever, all the Bachram started pushing in. So the Rebbe said, with the gaf in the tear, the Rebbe said with a smile, Ich mein nit nor for Elyon Navi. What? Yeah, Memchesta is not a senior Rebbe. And so when they would tell the Rebbe that the front door is open, then the Rebbe would start saying Shvei Chamascha. As far as I understand, the Rebbe sat, yeah. No. The Rebbe remained sitting on his place. I know in the Welt, they stand up for Shvei Chamascha, Chabad minhag is not to stand up. So from one of the Rabbeim, there's a word. Why didn't the Rebbe go to... What?
And you probably said...
Then you're standing. You go to the door. From, I don't know about Memches itself, but from Memtes, people stood by doors in 70 and they saw the Rebbe coming out. Memtes, Nun, Nun Aleph, people saw the Rebbe, even Membeis.
With the whole life.
Yeah. So I heard from Matcha Pilsner, he told me he realized that Mustama the Rebbe was going to come out, Memtes. So he said the Rebbe came out, the Rebbe was wearing his slippers. He was wearing a chalat or something, not a surtuk, I think. And he had a leichter, a three-way leichter. And a big Haggadah, a big print of the Haggadah. And the Rebbe came to the front door. He says, it was interesting. The Rebbe opened the door. The Rebbe stepped out to drop. It looked like the Rebbe was moving to the side. The person looked like the Rebbe was moving to the side. Leave room for someone else to come in. He said the Rebbe's face was shining. You could see the Rebbe was in the middle of the Seder. So the Rebbe's face was shining. It was around 12 o'clock when the Rebbe came out. The Rebbe said, Shei Chamascha. The Rebbe came to the side door where the Rebbe's car would go later years, after Memvav. That door. The side door is this. I don't know about Memches. He told Memtes. I didn't hear anybody saying that they went Memches. They went Chapsach. Only from Memtes. That's what Matcha Pilsner told me. I don't know. I wasn't here. They said he told a few guys. So there was about 30, 40 people there. He said he figured Mistama, when the Rebbe finishes reading Shulchan Aruch, the Rebbe's Mistama going to look who's there. So he went down the stairs. You know, the stairs go to the bathroom over there. You know, the side door to go into the Zal downstairs. So he went down there. The stairs used to be a lot taller. The whole driveway is lower down. So he went all the way down there. Like I saw, the Rebbe looked around to see who's there. And from Shvei Chamascha, so Rav Fitch often says that the Rebbe started saying loud. Something I can't remember exactly the niggin, but if they have to hear him the way he says it. But something like Shvei Chamascha lagoyim shleidahu I can't copy it. I don't know. In the whole Haggadah, from there, the Rebbe would say louder. Those who were close could hear. Those a little further. So Rebbe Yankel Katz was saying loud, so you couldn't always hear. He said sometimes the Rebbe would say slower, or say a piece slower than Rebbe Yankel Katz. And then everyone was able to hear the Rebbe saying the Haggadah. It says in Nishmas B'chlal, the Rebbe you'd see the Rebbe like. He says the only time you'd see the Rebbe like an Havoidedik Arichasdik davening, it's the only time you'd see it. I heard from him, I heard from Rav Shlomo Zarchi, a few people. Toshachov Kes, I forgot which night. And by Haidu, Bahal Agadol, Bahaidu, so the Rebbe says, La'eis iniflo is gedei, leis levadei, ki le'yelam chasei. And this the Rebbe repeated 3 times, and the Rebbe was banging, so seemingly were handles on the chair, whatever. He said the Rebbe was like banging on the chair. And 3 times the Rebbe said, Eis iniflo is gedei, leis levadei, ki le'yelam chasei. Not sure La'ila, maybe the last time was La'ila went higher. Later they said there was something was going on in the world at that time. It was a one-time thing. But the Chlal, you see the Rebbe Pashat with his ears.
Everybody says that from how lives about the going on this Haggadah.
Yeah.
Schock mit der Feuer. Und letztlich wenn der ganze von Mashiach.
Right.
Hallo lives ganz am anderes Haggadah.
Right. And after Hoshana Bar B'Shalayim, this I don't know how the Rebbe said it, but there's 2 recordings of the Rebbe saying Hoshana Bar B'Shalayim, just by the way. After the parade and Lag B'Omer Tashin Lamed Vav, and the end of Fabrein and Yudal Smith and Tashin Lamed Ches, so you hear the Rebbe saying the Hoshana Bar B'Shalayim. You can hear it yourself, I don't have to repeat it. I don't know how the Rebbe said it by the Seder, I didn't hear. Both times are different. And then the Rebbe would pour back the Kosher Shalio. I hear from everybody that I spoke to, and they all say they couldn't understand what was going on. The Rebbe would pour from the bottle to the Kosher Shalio, but he poured, before he started, the Rebbe poured off from Kosher Shalio to his own becher. Now the Rebbe would pour, I heard this from Rabbi Sudak, very detailed, and he told us something which makes sense, and I haven't heard any other beer from anyone else. When you try and pour from a full cup, it's very hard and it spills all over. So the Rebbe would pour from the Kosher Shalio to his own becher, which to take off some of the wine, so it should be easier to pour. Now the Rebbe would pour from the bottle into the Kosher Shalio, from Kosher Shalio into the bottle. The interesting thing is, he didn't pour straight. The Rebbe would stop in the middle and pour back. Pour back and back from the bottle into the cup, from the cup into the bottle. And that could happen a few times. One of these is Tashin Chai. In the Yoman it says, Nachman Sudak says that the Rebbe did it 9 times. I don't know how you could count. That's what it says in the Yoman. But the Rebbe obviously had a number, a way how he did it. So we go like this. First, he would pour from the Kosher Shalio back to the bottle, backwards and forwards a few times.
It's better you just said.
No. From the Kosher Shalio. He poured from the Kosher Shalio a little bit of wine to his becher. Pasha, the cup should be empty a little bit. And then he poured backwards and forwards a few times. He said, Sudak told us, he says, sometimes the Rebbe it was almost empty, and then they would pour from the bottle and almost refill it again. This was backwards, so nobody knew what was happening. You see, it's a himmel dikazachem. Nobody knows what's happening. When the Rebbe finished emptying Kosher Shalio to the bottle, the Rebbe went now to the wine which was in his becher, and did the same thing from the bottle into the becher, from the becher into the bottle, backwards and forwards a few times. When he finished the becher, the Rebbe took the wine and the tessel from Kosher Shalio and poured that inside his becher and did the same thing backwards and forwards. So it took a few minutes, by us, you're pouring a cup back into the bottle, how long does it take? But here it took Pasha a few minutes. And the whole time they were singing Heliata. And that was the minute. It was one year, I think it was Tasha Chavtes, when the Rebbe said to sing also Prozis. And the Rebbe started waving his hands. They say it was unbelievable. And here, mamish, the guys were jumping, and the table broke. Friedrich Rebbe's table, and the Friedrich Rebbe's Rebbetzin got very, very upset. The table was broken. She said, "That's it. Next year, nobody's coming in." And it was hard, and they tried, and they begged, and whatever. Only a few Bachram got in, like I told you before. By Shvei Chamaschal, the rest of the Bachram came in. But it was very, very most of the people, they didn't allow people to come in. Anyway, Shana Babu Yerushalayim, we should be very soon to have a Seder with the Rebbe's of people.
Amen. Erstens, der Gösen der Shekoyach. The Negia Mechiras Chometz. So,